visits very happy and well taken care of, so I had no second thoughts about leaving them with my parents. They spoke to me on the phone after their lunch and then around 5 p.m. we video chatted. The kids were also happy and healthy. I got home around 10:30 p.m. that night and called my mom to see if the kids were up by any chance and I could say goodnight. I missed the kids by about 20 minutes, they'd already gone to bed. So I talked to my mom for a little bit, but she's a pretty early sleeper too, so we hung up and went to bed. I woke up around 5 a.m. the next morning to go pick up my husband from the airport at 6 o'clock. We were going to get breakfast together and then go pick up the kids. I picked up my dear husband and neither one of us was very hungry yet, so we thought it'd be a nice treat to pick up the kids first and go to breakfast or brunch with my parents. We got to my parents' house at 7:45 a.m. My parents weren't there. My son was at the neighbor's house and ran outside with the neighbor as soon as he saw his dad and I pull up. He was hysterical and crying and I couldn't calm him down. My blood pressure was rising because now I'm thinking that something horrible has happened to my parents. My neighbor tells me that she isn't sure what's happening, but there was an ambulance at my parents' house at 6 a.m. and my dad had run over and woken them up to see if they could watch my son for a few hours until he got back. Of course, they'd said yes. I'm calling my parents nonstop at this point and I'm getting frantic because I don't know what's happened. My son was still crying but he was calmer. He still couldn't really explain to me what had happened though. I honestly don't remember the details of what happened next, but somehow we figured out that the ambulance was from the hospital nearby and we broke several driving laws trying to get there. We got to the hospital, pulled into the emergency entrance that was for ambulances only, left the car, and bolted inside. A few nurses took notice of us immediately and were asking us what was wrong. I was calmer than my dear husband at this point, so I explained that I didn't know, but my twin girls and my parents were here somewhere. I'll never forget the look on that nurse's face. She knew exactly who I was in that moment and she was about to cry. Another nurse took me and my dear husband to an empty room and asked us to calm down and listen to the doctor before we went to find my family. My mother had put coconut oil in both my daughter's hair when they were playing the previous day before bed. The girls loved it when my mom did their hair, so they asked for braids. My mom was doing their hair, she put coconut oil in both their hair because it would make for smoother braids. According to my son, my older daughter started to get a little dizzy and itchy when my mom was doing her hair, so my mom gave her some kids' Benadryl which made her sleepy since it was close to bedtime anyway. The kids then went to bed. Giving her Benadryl was something we did whenever she had a mild reaction since it usually meant she accidentally came across some coconut from a secondary source. We also showered her from head to toe immediately to erase any lingering traces of it. My mother simply gave her some Benadryl, kept the coconut oil in her hair, and put her to sleep. Benadryl made her sleepy and unable to wake up or be conscious enough to wake up her brother or cry. She vomited in her sleep and the rash spread. Her little body was swollen to twice the size. She had asphyxiated in her sleep. She passed away painfully and slowly in the early hours of the morning. My mother had found her when she went to check on the kids in the morning around 7 a.m. She was already gone by then. My mother screamed and called for my dad and that's when they'd gone to the hospital. My dad hadn't known about the coconut oil until my mom explained, and to this day I've never seen my father so angry. He was still unable to look at my mother out of fury or at me out of shame when I saw him at the hospital. They had rushed to the hospital hoping there was some way to save my older daughter and get my younger daughter checked out immediately since he thought she might have a mild allergy as well. I can't even explain to you the emotions my husband and I felt. I remember seeing my little girl and just being in denial. There was no way that she was gone. This had to be a horrible, horrible nightmare. The following days, the funeral, and explaining to my other kids what had happened are events I still can't talk about because it just breaks a part of me. My mother was investigated as was my entire family. I almost lost my kids to my country's version of CPS once because they thought my kids were in danger. My dear husband and I had to fight tooth and nail to show that uprooting them during this time would be the worst thing for them at the moment. My mother was never arrested. My father did leave her though. They're not officially divorced. The majority of my mother's family refuses to speak to her and the few that do speak to her only do so on a limited basis. She currently lives on her own in a small town and every couple of months I'll get a call from her telling me how sorry she is and how she just wasn't thinking and can I please find a way to forgive her. She wants to come see me. The only thing I can find to ever say to her is, you can come see me when you bring my daughter with you. It's been 13 years. The older son just got his license this year and the younger daughter is going to start high school soon. Both of them are healthy and they're turning into amazing adults, but neither one has been the same since the older daughter passed. The older son is extremely protective of the younger sister and doesn't allow anyone to breathe rudely in his presence. My younger sister used to be so bubbly and such a talkative little child, but she's quiet now. When she does speak, it takes some effort to hear her because she's so quiet. She told me a few years ago that she knows she was only a baby when it happened, but she feels incomplete all the time, like a part of her is missing. I didn't know what to say to her. If it weren't for my dear husband, I don't think I could have ever recovered from the loss of my daughter. We have helped each other through the loss. It's taken over a decade of therapy to even get to this point. I don't know what I expect to get out of typing all of this out, but I've seen how much comfort this brings other posters, so hopefully, I find some of the